Hey friend, Jill Jackson here. I've moved in close because I want to have a little heart-to-heart with you. I don't know what time of year you're watching this video. It could be the beginning of the year where you're fresh and you're like, this is the greatest year ever. And it could be the middle of the year where you're like, why do we do this again? Or it could be the end of the year where we're like a horse to the barn, a horse to the stable. We got to make it to the end. Just survival is where we are. But regardless of when you're watching this video, I see something on campuses that I want to make you aware of, and no doubt you've experienced it too. And I want you to watch out for it because I think it's a real school year killer. And here's what it is. There are times, there are teachers, there are places, there are classrooms, there are people that delight in reminding you or reminding me of what happened last year. So they might say things like, oh, you've got that low class, or whoa, good luck with that group, or wow, we got that wild group of kids coming through, it's your turn, break a leg, or don't call me, I did the best I could. Whatever it might be, those kinds of joking-ish comments really translate into being mood killers for you as the teacher who is inheriting those kids or already has inherited those kids. And here's the deal, you have a choice. You know, I talk all about choice and declaring how the school year will be, all that kind of stuff, but your choice is this. I can choose to embrace what somebody else said about the kids that I have this year, which means that I basically am admitting or copying to this idea, which is not true, that I have no instructional power. Or you can choose to completely disengage from and not listen to somebody who tries to tell you about your students and what they did last year. And I hope that you would hang on to this idea that kids need a refresh. You need a refresh. I need a refresh. And the refresh that they get is every year when they get to join a new class. And that's you for this year. They don't have to repeat last year's behaviors. They don't have to repeat last year's foibles. They don't have to show up as the same kid this year as they did last year. They can make a different choice. And we need to allow them, you need to allow your students to make a different choice. You know, in the work that I do where we go out and work with schools and school districts and all of that, it's wild because, and you've probably experienced this too, I will follow a student throughout the day. Sometimes if we're trying to figure out what's going on with this kid, why is this kid not mastering this and how can we help? And let's just say it's a middle schooler or a high schooler and they go from teacher to teacher to teacher, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 teachers in a day. It's like that student has a whole other personality in the different classes depending on who the teacher is. Now, I don't think that student is like, oh, I'm going to act this way in this class. I'm going to act this way in this class. I'm going to act this way. I think what that student is doing is providing a very vivid illustration of how powerful a teacher is and how powerful a teacher's expectations are and how powerful a teacher's ability to allow a student to recover is. And so you don't have to buy into, in fact, you shouldn't, of course, buy into what last year's teacher thought of this year's kids because they can show up different. Just like you can say, you know what, I felt like I got into a slump last year. I'm not going to do that this year. But you've got to take some action to avoid slipping into listening to and buying into what last year's kids did and have them bring it into this year. Number one, you have to make a habit of not hanging out with the teachers that talk like that. And I know I'm getting real motherly and like, don't, but I really mean it. Who you hang out with in the staff room, who you hang out with as you team together, you may not always have control over, but how long you spend with them and how you engage in the conversation with them is totally up to you. You have to have a habit of not hanging around for very long the people who like to nag about last year's issues and bring them into this school year. That is a habit. You have to have a habit of not being around those people. And if you have to be around them because they're on your team and you can't choose, you have to make it a habit of not falling into the conversation. Number two, don't be that person. Now, sometimes we like to kind of gossip. Gossip's a terrible word, but it's the only word I could think of. Gossip about our kids like, oh, did you hear this? Or here's a situation, or this is what happened last year, and wow, and all this kind of stuff. But you can't be that person. You can't afford it. You can't afford it because your kids need the ability to recover. The kids need to know, and you know kids sniff all of this out so quickly. They're such good judges of character without even knowing it. They need to know that when they come to you, that they are getting a fresh start. They see it in your eyes that my teacher is not thinking back to all the things I did last year or last week or even this morning, but that every moment is a moment to start again. And what I find again and again and again is when kids trust us that we are giving them that start, that refresh, that we're not listening to the little junk from last year, they perform at a higher level because they realize that we're calling them to a higher level. So our takeaway from this is, number one, don't hang around people who want to bring last year's junk into this school year. Number two, don't be the person that perpetuates that. And number three, allow your kids to recover. Because when you do 1, 2, and 3 that I just shared with you, you set up for a clean, clear, and free runway for your kids to go down in this school year. And I can't think of a better way to lay some excellent instruction, but on top of a clean runway, just ready to roll right through that class day, that class week, that class month, and that class year with fantastic success. So be encouraged, be bold, go out and teach your hearts out, and I'll see you next week. Bye.